Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Do I Have Time For This? The series that looks at old and new video games from indie to AAA and everything in between to help you figure out if you've got the time to play, finish, 100% complete a game, or to just leave it in your backlog to forever gather dust. Today we're ripping and tearing into another entry in what people are calling the modern Doom series, Doom: The Dark Ages. Acting as a prequel to Doom 2016, The Dark Ages takes a look into Doomguy's crusade prior to being sealed away, where he's seemingly under the control of the Makers, who look a bit like the humans from Wall-E. This new game takes, for Doom anyway, a very story-heavy approach compared to the previous two games, with plenty of cutscenes and a lot of lore entries to dig through should you have the curiosity to go looking. Marketed as an entirely new way to play Doom, there is a massive change up to a lot of the gameplay systems and the game feel here, in my opinion, for the better. Just before we jump in, I want to mention I'm playing Doom on my high-end PC here using PC Game Pass. I've had no performance issues at all, save for the music randomly turning off at points, but I did see a lot of reports on release of numerous crashes on PC. I believe this has now been fixed, but as always, a buyer beware to do some research on your chosen platform prior to buying. To my knowledge, the console version is issue-free. Without further delay, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, jump into that hell portal, and let's carve through the hordes of hell until Earth is safe from demons. Doomguy starts the game as a sort of rabid dog on a leash. You're unleashed as a sort of last resort super weapon when the normal humans start to struggle in battle, and the tutorial takes place within a great medieval style town. From here, there's a big bad, human and alien faction introduced, then you're just allowed to have at it. There is significantly more story here than in the previous games, taking a leaf out of the Doom Eternal DLC book, but with it being Doom, it's only ever a few minutes before you're thrust right back into the action. That being said, let's get on to the gameplay changes. Doom: The Dark Ages feels familiar, yet fresh. During the marketing, id Software described Doomguy in Doom Eternal as playing like a fighter jet, but here in The Dark Ages, he's a tank. And they absolutely nail this gameplay feel, as he stomps around the battlefield, obliterating fodder demons and taking hits left and right. The main thing they changed despite getting rid of almost all of the movement tech from Eternal was that they added a shield, and much like the axe in God of War 2018, prepare to be throwing that thing at anything and everything that moves. Used for blocking shots, rushing enemies, traversing, puzzles and parrying, get used to using this shield a lot. With the amount of projectiles on screen at any time, the shield kind of became a must-have item, and you can tell they tailored the game around it. A slight drawback of this was that with the sheer volume of enemies, it was easy to get clipped off screen, especially as they have projectiles home in on you, now they know you can block them easily. By no means a deal breaker, but it did result in getting hit a lot when I shouldn't have. The idea is that you dodge or block the orange projectiles, but then parry the green attacks, making it an almost rhythm-like bullet hell. I played on the suggested difficulty as I always do in these reviews, and it felt like the parry window was extremely forgiving. To be honest, it felt more like a parry gate than a window after playing Expedition 33.
Watch out! Watch out!
Again, they nail the power fantasy with this weapon, cleaving through fodder enemies instantaneously, and hearing the parry sound each time you successfully blocked a green attack was so satisfying. As for the guns, they've all been overhauled to fit the more medieval aesthetic. You'll have seen this in the marketing, but some weapons now use the skulls of your enemies to fire back at them, alongside things like spikes, a ball and chain, flails, maces, and a very cool version of the BFG I won't spoil. The weapons here are particularly visceral, emphasizing brutality and impact over everything else, with the upgrades for them mainly revolving around more power and crowd control due to the higher enemy count. They also have cool skins you can find throughout the world, alongside gold skins you can unlock for doing mastery challenges once fully upgraded. These mastery challenges force me to use weapons I normally wouldn't, and they're a great welcome addition on top of the level challenges present in each chapter. Something you may take as a positive or negative depending on how much you like Doom Eternal, the guns in the Dark Ages don't need to be switched out anywhere near as often this time around. If you upgrade the shield from the start of the game, you'll never really need to switch around to deal with armor or shields. Some are naturally better than others at dealing with certain enemy types, but they all work, so the constant weapon switching from Eternal is gone, and you can essentially just keep your favourite throughout the game, alongside the shield and melee weapons for ammo and health. As I say, some may feel like something's missing because of this lack of a need to switch, but I personally welcome the change. The guns are so cool though, I ended up switching often anyway. Aside from the weapon switch up, there were two other major changes to the gameplay in the game, glory kills and the play space, and as it turns out, one sorely relied on the other. Let's start with the glory kills, as they've been more or less removed from the game. I'll explain why, and why I understand the removal in a moment, but I do believe it's a huge miss for the game not to be able to rip demons apart with your bare hands like you used to. Instead, when they glow for an execution, you just whack them once with melee and then move on. There's no animation to it at all, save for the boss type enemies which do. Glory kills have been a huge part of the modern series for so long, and it's such a shame that they're gone. To explain why though, id Software decided to make the levels of this new Doom entry wide linear in nature. This means whilst they're not quite open world and do have a singular path, the play space is huge and filled with secrets. This meant that aside from a lot of upgrade materials and collectibles being scattered throughout the levels, there's also a huge amount of enemies, to the point where you're almost taking on armies by yourself. It explained that they felt people would get bored doing this many glory kills over and over again, and whilst I may not agree, I do understand why it was removed. The last thing to mention gameplay wise is what I'm going to call the mounted sections. Split into two very distinct versions, you have the mech sequences, which is something out of Pacific Rim, and the flying sections. The mech sequences do start off very strong, as you stomp all over tanks and enemies you had to physically fight before, further promoting the power fantasy. However, they are a bit lackluster once you realise what you're doing. This could be down to the easier difficulty, but all you do for combat in these sequences is quick dodge enemy attacks, punch them until you get a super move, rinse and repeat. There's no extra bits to do, no QTEs or anything, even when you get a gun the size of a skyscraper.
Oh, yeah.
The flying sequences are similar, but in my opinion much better, as you can smoothly transition between flying around and being on foot. The idea is you fly around in open space, fight an enemy or enemy ships so you can land, you'll hop off the dragon in a very cinematic fashion, then do something on foot prior to getting back on the dragon. Again, when mounted, you're locked into combat and just dodging a green attack to power up your guns, but given there's a bit more to do and it looks way smoother than the mech combat, I honestly prefer these sections over the mech ones. Along with the huge overhaul to gameplay in Doom the Dark Ages, there was also an overhaul to the look and feel of the world. I'm a massive fan of what they've created here. A bit like Marvel's version of Thor's world or the Warhammer 40k universe, they've masterfully blended the medieval with the futuristic. You have flying boats, huge temples powered by what gets referred to as magic, alongside things like using a skull as a key or having weapons firing skull shards. Doomguy himself also got a makeover, given a lot of spikes on his armor alongside a fur cape, which is very God of War Ragnarok. I love what they've done here. Being a massive fan of Warhammer 40k, this hits exactly what I want. Charging through ruined towns, fighting demons with sci-fi guns, whilst corpses hang from burning trees in a courtyard is just my cup of tea.
Stop it. Get some help.
There are some points where it looks just futuristic and nothing else, and in my opinion these are the weaker levels, but we also dive into some crazy hell dimensions too, which look amazing. To aid with his more open level design, there's also a Metroid-like 3D map that lets you figure out where all the hidden collectibles and resources are. This map is so detailed, you'll likely be checking it constantly if you're a completionist like me, but it's so helpful to stop you from missing anything. Last, and unfortunately the least entertaining thing in Doom the Dark Ages, is the music. After recording for Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, Mick Gordon had a very public spat with Bethesda over the music tracks he submitted to them, and him alleging they used unfinished tracks in the final product. As such, in this game, Mick isn't present on the game's soundtrack and it shows. The music is extremely generic with no outstanding bangers in the vein of what Mick would come up with. It kind of feels like what I would come up with if I was given some musicians and told to make a Doom soundtrack. There's just no heart in it at all. Nothing gets me more pumped at the gym than something like Rip and Tear by Mick Gordon. Such a disappointment they couldn't fill his very big shoes. So, let's get down to it. How long does this game take? I finished every level of this new Doom entry, found almost every secret and left a majority of levels at 100%, and my playtime came in at around 20 hours. If you're just looking to rip and tear until it's done, a straight playthrough with no side content will take about 16 hours. For those looking to punish the demons to hell and back, getting all collectibles, upgrades and achievements, you're looking at 25 hours, maybe more without a guide. The game costs £70 or $70, and is also available on Game Pass if you're on PC or Xbox. I feel less and less like $70 is a good asking price for a game, but in this instance, I'd say it was worth it. Achievements are actually surprisingly easy. All you need to do is grab all the collectibles and finish all the challenges. I'm sure there are great spots people have found online for farming weapon mastery, so it wouldn't take a long time on top of a regular playthrough for the 100%. In terms of time spent, there are 22 chapters in this game, and most of the linear levels can be done in about half an hour, including all the secrets. The wider levels usually take around an hour if you look in every nook and cranny, so you'll need to set aside a decent chunk of time to play. My main issue with these wider levels with regards to time is that the autosave is terrible, meaning you can grab collectibles thinking it'll save them automatically, and it just doesn't. So when you pick up where you left off, you have to grab them again. You also have to do something significant like a checkpointed activity to progress the story in order for it to save, so you can't just switch it off whenever you want. There are however some difficulty sliders to make life easier for almost every aspect of the game, including game speed. So if you want to rush something or get to a checkpoint, you can do so by literally speeding the game up. There are also life sigils that let you restart instantly without having to go back to a checkpoint. You can only hold 3, but I only ever used 2 throughout the entire game on Hurt Me Plenty difficulty. I fully recommend Doom the Dark Ages. Even if this turns out not to be your favourite of the modern reboot series, it can't be denied this game has a solid gameplay loop, visceral first-person combat, and a setting that leaves you wanting more. A fun thing I couldn't fit in anywhere else is I actually won a competition over on Twitter to win the Doom the Dark Ages custom controller. I didn't play the game with it or anything, as for nerd reasons, I didn't want to take it out of the box.
You removed it from its original packaging!
No! It's no longer a collectible! Oh!
Rather than sitting on their hands and just making the same games over and over again, id Software have been iterating and changing things up every time a new game in the series is released. Starting in the primordial ooze with 2016, pumping it full of steroids for Eternal before settling into its bear phase with Doom the Dark Ages, Modern Doom is a series you can depend on for a rip-roaring good time that has a finite start, middle and end, no never-ending gameplay loops, and solid mechanics. You may prefer 2016 or Eternal, I personally prefer the Dark Ages, but I think one thing we can likely all agree upon is this game is a fantastic thrill ride from start to finish, and I can't wait to see what id and Bethesda cook up next. Do you have time for Doom the Dark Ages? On this channel I like to give my thoughts on the game, alongside a bit more of a deep dive on the time you have to invest, so you know what you're getting into, because time is precious, right? If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, feel free to like and share. If you subscribe, I'm looking to put out regular content like this alongside some more in-depth video essays and freeform videos, so stick around, and if you have any requests on future videos, just drop them in the comments. And finally, if you want to come chat with me, you can find me over on x.com/gracious_rhino. I'm Gracious Rhino, look after each other, and I'll catch you soon.